develop that first language. And that's where that paradigm shift I was talking about. For many persons in the United States, for a student to learn English, we should get rid of the Spanish. That's not only not necessarily true, but in fact what this theory implies is the opposite. If we want this kid to learn English, we have to teach him his first language, in this case Spanish. We have to develop that Spanish. If we don't develop that Spanish enough, that first language enough, it will become a glass ceiling that will hinder, that will stop the development of the second language. The more we develop this first language, the easier and faster the second language will develop. The second tenet, common underlying proficiency, that's a very easy to understand idea. Whatever I learn, whatever concept I learn in one language will immediately transfer to the other language. When I was a kid, I learned that this was called a silla, right? Mi mamá me dijo que servía para sentarse, que si me paraba en ella y me caía me partía la cabeza. Y como era bien necio, me paré en ella, me caí y me partí la cabeza, ¿verdad? Pues me quedé pelón. No, no es cierto. Cuando llegué a los Estados Unidos, when I came to the United States, they told me, here we don't call it silla, we call it chair. Do I need to stand in the chair and fall again to understand what a chair is for? No, I already learned that. De la manera dura, right? Okay. So whatever we learn in one language is there, easy transferable into the second language. The only thing we have to learn now is the label. So if I learn what a silla is, o qué es el músculo esternocleidomastoideo, que es el músculo que mueve la cabeza, I can learn that, and then I just have to learn the label in English. Okay? So if we teach chemistry, physics, math, science, social studies, in one language, it will transfer to the other. This is especially true because here are the challenges that your principals have to meet. For example, it's easy to say, oh, they're going to teach in Spanish, right? But for example, Ms. Longoria this year, she had a set of students in 8th grade receiving instruction about social studies, U.S. history, all year in Spanish. But what happened in April 29th? They had to be tested, and that test was in English, isn't it? That was a question that Dr. King asked the first time he came into my classroom. When do you change into English? 2 weeks before the test? 1 month before the test? And the answer was really simple. Never. Okay? I never change. Why? Knowledge will transfer. Okay? My job as the content teacher is to teach that. Content. I'm going to teach content exclusively. Okay? The language will develop naturally for that student. Okay? Especially through a set of structures that we have in place. Now, the third concept that it's very important for you to understand too is the idea of the threshold, bilingual threshold hypothesis. What this means is we can all, in essence, claim to be bilingual. Right? Podemos mantener una plática en dos idiomas. Nos podemos entender bastante bien en inglés o en español. Si me preguntan que si hablo francés, ¿qué les voy a decir? Oui. El problema es que es lo único que sé decir, ¿verdad? Oui, pero ya soy trilingüe. ¿De veras? That makes me trilingual? Not necessarily, right? Okay. So the whole issue here is that according to Cummings, there are levels of bilingualism and biliteracy. Levels that technically impact the education of students. The first level, and unfortunately a very common level, is when the student develops the first language in a very basic level, in a minimum level. That kid is early transitioned into English. So he never fully develops that language, that first language to grade level. But because that language becomes a glass ceiling for the second language, that second language stays undeveloped too. What happens is that we end up with a student, with a learner that is technically limited in proficiency in both languages. He's limited in English and he's limited in Spanish. Yes, he can maintain a conversation. Lo vemos en el pasillo, nos habla en inglés o en español. But truly, can this kid read a book at grade level in English or in Spanish? Probably not. Okay, and that happens to a lot of our students. According to Cummings, those kind of students will experience negative cognitive effects. Technically, according to Cummings, these kids are going to be dumber than average.
More challenged than average. More challenged.
More challenged. Yeah, let's be political.
PC.
So, the next level, also very common in our nation, it's when the kid does not develop fully the first language, but is able to break that glass ceiling and develop the second language. That happens to a lot of your students, to a lot of our students. Students who were born in a Spanish-speaking home, they develop the English so well that they end up forgetting the Spanish. They're no longer able to communicate with the grandpas or with mom or dad, or at least to have a complete conversation. But they're able to perform in school. They're going to be our average student in school. Okay? And we're going to talk to them about our histories of success. You see, he could make it. Yes, but at what level? And then there is that third level, that's why the threshold hypothesis, that claims that when a student develops the first language at grade level, and then develops that second language at grade level, that student develops cognitive gains, cognitive benefits, and technically is going to be more intelligent. How are you going to say that?
They are above average.
Okay. Than the average student. Okay? So is that necessarily true? We're going to see. Now, so basing those three theories, Thomas and Collier claims that the extent and quality of schooling in the first language, not in English, in the first language, is the #1 predictor for long-term academic achievement in English. So yes, you see, here we go to a claim, we go between two claims. One sounds really logical, the other one doesn't. Unfortunately, the one that does not sound logic, that's the good one. A lot of people will tell you, you want your kids to be successful in English, teach them in English only. Okay? Here Thomas and Collier are saying, you want your kids to be successful in English, teach them their first language. And they will develop that age. Okay?